Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, you guys. Today, we are going to be taking a look at a pretty hot debate in the Spider-Man gaming community.
Yeah, this one gets pretty heated.
It really does. So we are talking about two of the most recent Spider-Man games,
Mm.
and just trying to see what are the arguments for and against each one. Is one better than the other? I mean, I think we all have our own personal preferences, right? But
Right.
we're trying to be, a little bit more objective than that.
Absolutely.
So specifically, we were talking about Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, two of the biggest releases, and they both have just such passionate fan bases.
They really do.
Yeah.
So we have,
Yeah.
gone out there and we found, people arguing about these games online.
Oh, yeah. You always find those.
You're really getting into, so we've kind of distilled it down into the, core arguments, the core things that people are saying
Exactly.
about each of these games.
Mhm.
And, we are going to try to present them to you in a way that is, fair and balanced and
Impartial as we can be.
exactly. Yeah, impartial.
Uh,
So, you as a listener can maybe decide for yourself, like, okay, like what clicks with me more?
yeah, which side do you fall on?
What makes sense to me?
Yeah.
So to kind of get started, I think the first big point of comparison is the stories and the characters.
Right. Like the heart of what makes each game tick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, right off the bat, uh, there is a pretty big contrast in the scope of the stories.
Totally. And that's something the Miles Morales fans really emphasize. They love that it's this really tight personal story. It's about Miles becoming Spider-Man, but it's right there in his neighborhood in Harlem.
Yeah, it feels very like down to earth almost.
Yeah, very grounded.
Even though it's a superhero story, right?
Exactly. It's about him protecting his community, his people. It's a very intimate kind of heroism.
Yeah. Whereas with Spider-Man 2, you're talking about dual narratives, right?
Oh, yeah. You've got Peter going through his own struggles, and then you have the whole massive Venom arc running alongside that.
And that's citywide, right? I mean, the
Oh.
stakes are huge.
Absolutely. You've got Kraven the Hunter. You've got this symbiote invasion. It's like everything is on the line.
So what do you think about that difference in scale then?
Yeah.
Like is one approach inherently better than the other?
It's really interesting because I think it just reflects different things that people look for in these games. Miles Morales, it gives you that really focused experience. You're right there with him in his journey. You connect with the characters on a really personal level.
Yeah.
But then Spider-Man 2, it's going for that epic, almost operatic feel.
Ah.
A crisis that affects everyone, this huge threat that needs to be stopped. And you're switching between these two iconic heroes.
Yeah.
It's like a comic book blockbuster come to life.
And it's funny because you read these discussions online and the Spider-Man 2 fans, they don't, they don't dislike the Miles Morales story.
Yeah, they acknowledge it's good.
Yeah, they'll say like, yeah, it's a great coming of age story. It's really well done. But
But there's just something about that massive scale.
yeah, they want those world-ending stakes, those classic, Spider-Man villains like Venom.
Who doesn't love Venom?
Exactly. So it's like, what is it about that really pulls people in, do you think?
I think it's partly just the spectacle of it all, seeing these heroes pushed to their absolute limits against impossible odds.
Yeah.
But there's also something to be said for the emotional impact of that, when the stakes are that high.
Yeah, you really feel it.
Every victory feels that much more earned. Every loss feels that much more devastating.
So that's kind of the narrative side of things.
Yeah.
But how does all that translate into the actual gameplay experience? How does each game feel different to play?
Well, that leads us perfectly into round two, the gameplay and the combat. And this is where I think the real distinctions start to come out.
Yeah. Miles Morales, he's got his own unique abilities, right? Like those bioelectric venom powers and the invisibility.
Yeah, those are so cool.
I mean, the people who love this game, they rave about that stuff. They say that it just makes the combat feel so much more dynamic and impactful.
Yeah, you're not just webbing guys up. You're hitting them with these electric attacks and then vanishing into thin air. It's so satisfying.
It completely changes the flow of combat, right?
Absolutely. You have to think differently. You're managing your energy, you're chaining attacks together, you're using stealth in ways that Peter can't.
And on the other side, you have Spider-Man 2, and the fans are saying, okay, this game takes everything that was great about the combat in the first game and just takes it to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah, the refinements they made are incredible.
They've got the new parry system, the web wings for gliding across the city, and then, of course, you can seamlessly switch between playing as Peter and Miles.
Which opens up so many possibilities, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, we can't forget about Peter's symbiote powers, right? That's like
That changes
A
everything.
huge talking point. It's like you're playing as a completely different Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like this raw, aggressive style, you know? He's so powerful, but there's this sense of danger too, like he's almost losing control.
Yeah, it's a really cool contrast to the way Miles fights, you know.
Right, Miles is all about precision and control, and then you have Peter with the symbiote, just like unleashing this torrent of power.
Yeah, it's awesome. But there is this one point that the Miles Morales fans bring up about the web wings in Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah, the traversal debate.
They're worried that it makes getting around the city too easy, you know.
Oh, right, like you just kind of glide over everything.
Yeah, and they feel like it takes away from the skill of swinging, which is like
Such a core part of the Spider-Man experience.
exactly like in Miles Morales, they really nailed that feeling of momentum and precision, you know?
It takes practice to master.
Yeah, and the Spider-Man 2 fans, they come back and they say, okay, look, it's not about making the game easier. It's about giving you more options.
More freedom of movement.
Yeah, you can still swing around like a pro if you want to, but now you also have this other way to get around quickly.
It's about expanding your toolkit, you know?
So it's like a trade-off, right?
Yeah. Do you prioritize that challenge and that feeling of mastery, or do you go for more accessibility?
Yeah, I think that's something that each player has to decide for themselves, you know, what kind of gameplay experience they're looking for.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the stories, the combat, and, you know, the way you move around the city. What about the open world itself? You know, all the stuff you can do outside of the main missions.
Okay, so swinging into the open world debate.
Spider-Man 2 clearly has a bigger map, right? Like it's a much larger version of New York City.
Oh, yeah, they went all out with the scale.
But the Miles Morales fans, they're not necessarily convinced that that's a good thing.
Right, they're saying is bigger, always better.
Yeah, they kind of worry that maybe some of the side content in Spider-Man 2 feels a little bit repetitive or spread thin, you know?
That's a valid concern with any open world game, you know?
Yeah, it's easy to fill a map with icons, but are those activities actually engaging? Are they memorable?
Exactly. You want quality over quantity, right?
And the Miles Morales folks, they point to those Prowler side missions as a really good example of how to do side content, right?
Oh, yeah, those are fantastic.
You know, they were tied into the main story. They had real emotional depth.
They really fleshed out Miles's relationship with his uncle.
Yeah, it felt like they mattered, you know?
They weren't just filler content.
Now, the Spider-Man 2 fans, they say, okay, but look, having two playable characters opens up all sorts of possibilities for side content.
Right. You can have missions that are specific to Peter or Miles.
Yeah, and their different abilities and relationships.
It adds a layer of variety. Yeah.
So again, it comes down to what you're looking for. Are you looking for that more focused, tightly integrated side content?
Or do you want more variety, even if it means sacrificing a bit of depth?
I think that's a really interesting question.
It is.
So, okay, we've gone through all the major points of comparison. Now it's time for the grand synthesis. You know,
The ultimate verdict.
yeah, what can we take away from all of this?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Spider-Man 2 is definitely the bigger, more expansive game, you know, in every sense.
Yeah, bigger story, bigger world, more characters, more gameplay mechanics. It's like they just went for it.
It's the blockbuster Spider-Man experience.
Yeah, whereas Miles Morales, it's like this perfectly crafted gem. You know, it's this smaller, more intimate story, but it's so well done.
It's incredibly focused and polished.
Yeah, and I think that's the key takeaway here, right? Neither game is objectively better than the other.
It's all about personal preference.
Yeah, they just excel at different things,
Yeah.
and they appeal to different kinds of players.
They're both great Spider-Man games in their own way.
Exactly. So for you, the listener, which one clicks with you more, you know?
Yeah. Which one speaks to your spider sense?
Do you want that massive, sprawling adventure or the more focused emotional journey?
It's your call.
And I think this debate actually brings up some really interesting points about game design in general. You know,
Yeah, it goes beyond just these two titles.
how do you balance scope and scale with depth and emotional impact?
How do you design an open world that feels both vast and engaging?
And ultimately, how do you create a game that makes the player feel like they're really inhabiting the role of a superhero?
It's not just about the powers and the costumes. It's about the emotional experience.
Yeah, it's about making you believe